Excellent.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of Skill Up Like a Superhero as part of the Cyber Back to School event and October Cyber Awareness Month. Today, we're going to be talking about building governance within your organization and building a risk-aware culture. And with me today is somebody that I see as an expert in that area that I work with a lot, and that is Vickie Gray from Gray Matter GRC. Welcome, Vickie. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, Dwayne. I always enjoy our conversations. I'm Vickie Gray, and I own, as Dwayne said, Gray Matter GRC Ltd. I became involved with Dwayne as an ISACA trainer. Through Captain Hyperscaler, I teach some of the ISACA courses at this point. And in addition to that, I am an accredited training organization and trainer for PeopleCert to do ITIL training, and in particular, the more advanced courses in the ITIL scheme. And I've been in IT, as Dwayne and I joke, since the Jurassic period, and and I still have the scars from the dinosaurs, and so I've pretty much seen, everything there is to see in changes in IT over the last long time. And what's interesting now, and we're going to talk about this today, is how governance has become so important, especially in information security and cybersecurity, and how much awareness of the risks around information security within the larger enterprise have become not just a concern of IT or information security, cybersecurity, but everyone.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and one that I don't dance around. I was just teaching. I was doing probably the first live course my first live course of Accolade's AI Security Foundation certification, which is a beta certification that's in beta right now. And I wrote the course for it to deliver it and be kind of the first to market around courseware around that particular content. And it's built around the NIST AI risk management framework. And one of the key aspects within that framework is govern. And one of the things that I was pointing out when I was talking through and going through the class is if you're familiar with the NIST risk management framework and you're familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework, the AI risk management framework actually aligns a lot better to the cybersecurity framework than it does to the typical 800-37 risk management framework that NIST has, because and one of the points that I made when I was teaching the class was the NIST risk management framework has a lot more to do around application development and system development but where the AI risk management framework really has a lot more to do with handling organizational risk and governance, just like the 2.0 version of the cybersecurity framework, which added governance into its functions as well. So they line to each other very well. And as the Accolade training started, and the certification started with the NIST CSF 2.0 anyway. So it's a very logical evolution if you're building, as we call it, Captain Hyperscaler, your hero saga and your origin story. That's a very nice way to kind of get into and understand risk governance. And as you mentioned, and as we've talked about very much, and I'll turn it over to you on this statement or question, is how do you see from that standpoint of kind of building that foundation, building that framework with the cybersecurity framework and risk management frameworks, whether it's for systems or security or for AI, how would you kind of align the aspect of ITIL into that ecosystem?
Well, it's been interesting exploring ITIL version 4. I was an ITIL version 1 person way back, as I say, and then version 2 and version 3. And the evolution from version 3 to version 4 has been, I would say, a fundamental one. And the reason for that is that it takes into account the changes that we've experienced in IT in general. So information management within enterprises, the larger concerns of IT. It used to be when you talked about ITIL, people would think service desk, right? Incident management, problem management, change management. And that was kind of it. And people would, they would say, well, if I don't do those things, then it doesn't matter to me. I'm in cybersecurity or I'm in software development. I don't need to think about ITIL. What's interesting about version 4 is it was a comprehensive and fundamental rewriting of the entire framework. And the reason for that is you can no longer separate those functions. There is just so much, wickedly intertwined function, practice, process, governance, reporting, everything. You cannot really anymore say, oh, that's just a service desk thing. And when it comes to risk management, cybersecurity, particularly AI, what we're talking about is a world where, systems that you have come to rely on over 10 or 15 or 20 years can suddenly stop working because of a simple change. And that can create a global impact. And what ITIL version 4 really does is it says, because we cannot separate out the operations from the release management, the development, the cybersecurity, we need to look at all of the different aspects of IT, including cybersecurity. And I know that that's a controversial thing to say, that cybersecurity is involved with IT. There are folks who will send me messages about my saying that. But in the end, what we're talking about is the security of the data, right? And a lot of what's driving, the adoption of NIST, ISO, GDPR, all of the regulations around the world is the need to protect data. And for quite a long time, because we were siloed in IT, we were able to say, oh, data is handled by somebody else. The people who look after, mainframes or storage or even cloud storage now. But in the end, we all have to protect that data. And I think what's interesting about what you and I are doing together is we're trying to bridge those gaps between what people saw as operations and what people have traditionally seen as information security or cybersecurity. And I think what you and I are doing to create that synthesis is really interesting. And, I think it's worth you talking about the idea of the saga.
Mm-hmm.
And, how do we get from cyber awareness to the governance of data within the enterprise in a way that recognizes every enterprise is now facing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And there are these frameworks. How do we apply those frameworks? How do we learn what those frameworks are, and how do we think about them and apply them?
Mm-hmm. No, that's an excellent point. And the interesting thing, I like going back to your point of you'll get messages about saying that cybersecurity and IT are together. I've had people tell me in the past that that compliance and governance and risk don't fall into security. They're different term or different practice areas essentially, but they are. But if you look at all of these frameworks and the frameworks that have been updated most recently, like the risk management framework, and you mentioned ITIL, and the cybersecurity framework, and the new AI risk management framework, governance and risk are very key to all of those. And like you said, the protection of your data is all at the forefront. And I have this conversation over and over again, especially when teaching AI security classes. And I'm teaching actually today a prompt engineering class. And you look at, open, Azure OpenAI or AWS Bedrock or Google Genesis, and everybody is thinking, oh, I got these great ways to be creative and use prompt engineering, and all of these things are great. And then you have the IT and the cybersecurity people saying, hold on, we don't know what's going on with our data on it. And one of the things that I always say is that we have to put some simplicity around it. We can very easily simplify everything that we're talking about, but in an approach to data engineering and understanding where your data is and how to protect data loss, and going really through a data engineering lifecycle of, you've got raw data coming in, or you're grabbing raw data in your AI application, and how are you governing over that data? What data loss prevention policies do you have in place? Are you classifying all of that data, and are you segmenting then the networks appropriately? So back to, IT doesn't involve cybersecurity. There are the network administrators are part of IT. The identity and access administrators are part of IT, and they definitely touch cybersecurity in that aspect of things. If you're doing proper defense in depth, they are a part of it. They are involved. They may not be accountable, but they're definitely responsible for a good portion of it. So, and to kind of go back to kind of what you were saying in terms of how we approach things, and approach training and certifications and all of that at Captain Hyperscaler, we take an approach of similar to your superhero stories of that you have in the movie theaters, of what is your origin story, where you want to start, where do you want to be, what is your path to, and what is where do you want to start? Do you want to start in AI security? Do you want to start in risk and compliance? Do you want to start in governance and cyber resilience? But it all starts with risk awareness and risk culture. And whether you're a user or whether you're a risk or cybersecurity professional or an IT professional, having that foundation and that origin story takes you to the next level. And then you get into kind of those practitioner levels. And one of the things that I like particularly about Accolade and what they're building in terms of they're building those origin stories that we can teach, and we can get everybody really on the same page around cyber resilience, around risk management, and building those frameworks, and then taking that to what we call our hero sagas of going a step further. Now we get the processes and the streamlining of that through ITIL, and building that foundation with ITIL Foundation, and going even further in terms of that that management and managing risk within your organization, which then can take you to something more specific, like an ISACA level certification of information system manager, or C-risk, or the CISA for the auditing, or the CGIT for governance. All of those kind of get you then to, if we're talking about career advancement and career evolution, a level that that you can be comfortable in speaking, at various different levels, from the C level all the way down to the user level, about how important it is to govern your data and manage risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you brought up that this is not just a concern of a group of people within an organization. It's the whole business. And an interesting story came up recently about Warren Buffett's company Geico, possibly the largest auto insurance company in, if not the United States, at least the world. And they are on a path to repatriate from the cloud to their own data centers, the brand new data centers, all of their data storage and their AI processing, because those two things are the most expensive things in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
They've got hundreds of legacy applications that they started to transfer to the cloud in 2013 and just never happened. And they've got masses and masses and masses of data, and they are facing regulatory change. I think it was something like, well, I'm not going to quote a number, but it was thousands of different regulations that apply to the data.
Sure.
So if from an ITIL perspective, we're talking strategy, we're talking IT strategy and how that aligns with the business strategy. The business strategy is, we need to take into account that we have these risks. What are we going to do about that? And you and I talk in our risk courses about, how we deal with risk. And that's all tied into what's the risk tolerance of the business and the capacity and all the rest of it. So let's say that you're an engineer at Geico, and you no longer are going to be working in the cloud. You're going to be working in a physical data center owned by the company. What do you think those engineers need to learn to do to be able to take on that kind of work? And I know that you've worked with, managed service providers in the past, and I think that there's going to be a seismic shift in the needs of the people who work in IT as companies start to change how and where they store data, process data. What would you say to an engineer who wants to go work for Geico in this new data-centric world?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that you have to understand the various actors and the various aspects of risk that are on the data. Where does that data come from? I am a big advocate for understanding data engineering at least an architectural level of where all that data is coming from. I have this conversation a lot of times when doing like just doing a data engineering class and talking about, think about your own organization. And the interesting thing was, I actually heard a commercial on the radio this morning about, it was a cybersecurity awareness month commercial talking about and it was a commercial for Xfinity or Comcast that was talking about connected devices and how Xfinity Home can help you with all your connected devices. And the person and the DJ that was doing the commercial was mentioning the amount of connected devices that he has in his home. When he sat down and did a count, and he's like, I have at least 12 devices that are connected to my wireless in my house. And my thinking was, that's all.
I know.
because if I start counting my smart televisions, my own compute devices, our tablets, our smartphones, our Echo devices, I'm well over 24 at least in my own home where it has gone over the course of the last few years, and all of that is collecting data. So everything that I always kind of frame when I'm talking about data security and knowing your data, knowing where your data is, I always give that kind of example of, think about your own home, and then take it to the aspect of a organization that is thousands and thousands of people like Geico. and and where is all that data? Where is it coming from, and where is it going? Which is really the key aspect of it all, is where is it going? Where is it being stored? And you're saying, that Geico's kind of taking this seismic shift in the opposite direction of a lot of organizations, where they're going back into their own data center. I spent time with a managed security service provider that was struggling the opposite direction, in it had been spending decades protecting that data center and protecting that perimeter, and and did not have enough of the people in the organization couldn't talk about cloud security, have enough acumen to feel comfortable in doing that. And that was kind of what I was teaching them to do. But even if they're going into their own data center, and storing all of their information and their data in their own data center, Geico still has a website. They still have they still have apps on smartphones for their clients to use to file claims that and take that are we're taking pictures, we're putting personal identifiable information in there. Obviously, any kind of insurance claim reeks of all of that. It has all of that in there. There's you're not going to file an insurance claim without that personal identifiable information. So how is that all being protected? How is that being governed on those devices and beyond those devices, and that connection into that data center, and also out to the cloud for one degree or another? And talking about prompt engineering and AI security, they're obviously going to be using that technology and everything like that. One of the key things that we were talking about, I had somebody actually from CISA in my class, from the government organization CISA, in my AI security class this week, and we were talking about prompt injections. So SQL, I know SQL injections and very well, and the top, one of the top OWASP, in the OWASP top 10 is always injection attacks. Well, think about that from an AI perspective, of being able to inject a prompt that finds sensitive information, that draws it out of your website or out of the back end. How are you protecting against that? And so again, how are you walling off and segmenting your data and all this PII that you're getting from insurance claims and everything like that that are going into your data center, or for those people that are using cloud technologies and cloud apps, that are going into cloud storage environments, going into AWS S3 buckets or SQL databases. Those are all things that we've got to make sure that we are properly handling from a network perspective, from a identity and access permission perspective. So network access, IAM permissions, data permissions, data encryption, all of those defense in depth areas should all be considered, and all things that depending on where your knowledge base is today, if you're going to be an engineer within Geico, you should be thinking about all that and having the acumen around all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that also brings to mind for me a company like Geico, and I'm sure, all financial institutions are considering repatriating for exactly the same reasons. They don't have an organizational structure, an organizational culture that is designed for that kind of internal management of activity, right? A lot of what will have to be done within the data center is currently being done by a third-party supplier. That changes the game when you bring those activities back inside. And I think what's often missed in that kind of a shift, and of course, I'm sure Warren Buffett knows what he's doing. And makes sure that he has the right people in place to be successful in that shift. Folks who don't have Warren Buffett in charge probably will be surprised by some of the requirements of managing the people, managing the processes, the technology, the third-party suppliers. All of those things will shift. And that's where I think that the ITIL framework, the ITIL 4, can really bring a lot of value. It takes into account lean, DevOps, agile. It's a very modern framework at this point. And I think a lot of the challenges that people who maybe manage an engineering team or manage the managers, the things that they face in cybersecurity right now are not often comprehended from a, people management, process management, reporting, setting tactics and strategy. And I think that's where ITIL can really help give some models and some methods and some, as you say, some anchors to the work that needs to be done. So as well as the cyber security, the AI, understanding of how AI is changing cyber, and how the regulations and the standards like NIST can be applied. I think there's also this meta layer of how can we manage our organization so that we build a cyber aware culture that is appropriate to the risk that the business wants to take, right? So, Geico as an insurance company will have a very different risk posture than Apple, for instance. And I think, if you're an engineer coming from Apple into Geico, you're going to be surprised by how risk is handled. And when those kinds of shifts happen, people move between organizations and discover that the organization they used to work with has a very different way of doing things. That's where a framework like ITIL, which is about managing value from the demand from the customer straight through to the retirement of a service 20 years from now, it can really provide a good kind of anchor for folks who are being faced with a new organization, new processes, new risk tolerance, and new cybersecurity risks as well, and posture.
Yeah. The governance and that strategy comes from the at the executive level, and it's executed throughout the rest of the organization. And one of the things I always talk about when I'm most of I wish I if you're listening to this this webcast and you aren't a technical person, I recommend you take one of our courses, especially the Accolade, the foundation courses, because you will hear me talk about constantly the alignment between business and technical. And if because I get a lot of, mostly when I'm teaching ISC2 courses or ISACA courses, or a lot of times they are technical people, they're technical managers, or they've come from a technical background, but the level of business awareness that you need to have to get things done is very important. And I am always talking about that. And me and you, Vickie, we're always talking about that ourselves. And in the when you're sitting in on one of my classes and we're having our conversations with the students, or when we're just talking one-on-one, like now, we're always talking about that. And I talk about this from a cybersecurity strategy, from a risk awareness, from a company culture strategy, as well as even at a cloud strategy perspective. If you're aligning what you're trying to do from a risk and cybersecurity, a cyber resilience approach to the business mission, the continuity of business, the critical aspects of the business, that's where you're going to get funding and resources to put it in place. If you're not doing that, and you're not thinking about that the business aspect as as part of that full life cycle, you might as well update your resume. It's like I said, I make this statement. One of the things, one of my pet peeves around cloud. So not all my conversations around cybersecurity. I do talk a lot about cloud and cloud adoption and cloud migration, and anytime you look at like Microsoft or AWS, Google, and they talk about drivers to the cloud, and they put cost as like number one, and it just drives me crazy because and I tell everybody that takes any of my classes, when that slide comes up, I'm like, if that's the reason why you're being told you're migrating to the cloud, you might as well update your resume as you're building your project plan to migrate, because you got to have something else, and you got to have something tied to the business objectives. And it has not, and it's exactly the same thing around building that risk aware culture. We understand from a cybersecurity perspective what risks are there. We we understand that there are challenges in working with the data people and the identity people and the infrastructure people and the networking people from a cyber and especially the application development people, because they think they have everything locked down. They have it all figured out when they really don't. So you've got to understand, and the key to it is understanding what all those risks are, whether you're in your own data center, whether you're in the cloud, whether you're hybrid, whatever it is, where do those risks lie? And then how do those risks align to an impact that it's going to have on the objectives of the business and the critical systems of our business? Then you can build that business case, talk to the executives, and go from there. That's where you're going to get your resources. That's where you're going to get your funding. That's where you're going to build that culture, is based on, hey, this is where the pain's going to be. It's the classic what's in it for me aspect of things. You've got to go to each of those representatives, and that's what we try to teach here at Captain Hyperscaler in all of our classes is how does that approach affect the business? And that's one of the things I like about things that the cybersecurity framework does. Like I said, the AI risk management framework addresses that a lot more so than being very task and tactically oriented. Those frameworks are very business oriented, and again, very well done from a standpoint of both of those frameworks, as well as how Accolade has built their certifications that we're now teaching upon.
Yeah, and that's why I think that the link between what you and our backgrounds and our kind of focus to bring those things together, I think, is really unique in this industry. There's lots of cybersecurity, security, IT certification training out there. What I haven't seen until I met you and started working with you is this idea that we don't have to stay in our little silo, right? We don't have to just talk about information security or service desk or whatever slot we've been put into. And in fact, we are more likely to succeed if we expand our way of looking at what we do to how do we actually deliver value to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And is that through risk strategies? Is it through strategic investment portfolios? Is it, it could be all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that the approach that Accolade is taking, as you've said, is we are doing cybersecurity for a customer. We're not doing it just because it's a cool thing to do, although it is that.
We all got into technology and computers to be cool, right?
Absolutely. I am such a geek, and I'm very proud of it too.
I've got superheroes behind me. Come on,
I know. So there's actually a customer at the end of it, and if we can begin to think about information security, the frameworks we need to apply, the regulations that we need to follow, reporting, measurement, management of people and processes, all of that stuff. If we can do that, yes, Allison, it is a cool thing to do. We can think of that as delivering something to a customer, and that means that we can open our processes to other people within the organization and have more collaboration and more innovation. And I think that makes for a much more interesting workplace too. If we don't just say we're cybersecurity people or we're service desk people and that's all we do, if we begin to see it as, a system, a complex adaptive system that we get to be involved in, then that opens all kinds of doors for really cool stuff that we can do, whether it's in IT or cybersecurity or, management, strategy, all of those things.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to summarize things and close things out for today. We can we'll certainly have you back on another date, Vickie. I always enjoy talking to you, and always good to, it's a disservice, I think, when we have our talks one-to-one personally, to not put that out to everybody, because we hit on such good topics, I think. So definitely thank you very much, Vickie, for providing your insights here today. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to comment. We're live on LinkedIn, as well as on the Captain Hyperscaler, as well as the Cyber Back to School YouTube channel. So certainly feel free to reach out to us. You can find Vickie and me on social media channels like LinkedIn. You can also subscribe to the Captain Hyperscaler and the Gray Matter company pages. And learn more about the training that we provide. We have some live Accolade courses coming up here at the end of October. We've got the Cyber Resilience Foundations or Fundamentals course, soon to be called Foundations. I found out this week that the next iteration, they're going to get away from fundamentals, which was an interesting thing, because I was having a conversation in my AI security class this week, and I was telling how much I liked the fact that it was called a foundations class instead of fundamentals, because one of the nice things that I like about about the objectives of their exams is it goes a step beyond fundamentals, because you do get into scenario aspects. It's not quite practitioner. They have the practitioners for that, but it builds that foundation that, again, builds that origin story that you can then go from the foundation to the practitioner aspect, and then go beyond that into the more advanced and expert level aspects of ITIL and ISACA training to build your hero saga, take your path, choose your adventure to what area of risk or information security management you want to go into. We have that for you at Captain Hyperscaler, and Vickie is a integral part in that as well. So thank you very much. So thank you very much, Vickie, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And I'll use my standard aspect of our podcasts, and to tell everybody to keep learning and keep skilling up like a superhero.